Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your coming here. Before I talk, as usual, we'll have a karaoke lesson. So let's sing a song together. So this time is today is the final. So I'll sing 蛍の光 Okay. Old Lang Syne.
Yeah, just listen and use it when it goes midnight.
Should all acquaintance be for and not should all acquaintance be for and Thank you. We got the mic. One more time. Okay, let's sing a song together. As a commemoration, I'll take a video, so from the beginning to the very end. Okay? So after the meeting, please have a question. Today we have a new participant. So one by one, would you please introduce yourself? Okay, please.
Hello, everybody.
ちょっと座れるかな。ちょっと
My name is Isao Eiji. Isao Eiji.
すみません。うわすみません。
This time is for me. This time is my first time visiting Georgia.
ああ、すみません。はいはい。
I'm very sorry to go. Very sorry. I'm living in Onomichi near Shinkansen station. So I going to Japanese language classes for teaching Japanese to come from Asia, Africa, and USA. About there are about 30 people. And our supporters are about 30 people. So I have one meeting a week. Tuesday is the lesson for them. So I have a newspaper from the association about the gather of this association. So I wanted to attend today. So I called to Matsuda-san to attend this meeting. This is my introduction. Okay? Thank you.
Where is the meeting? Where do you teach Japanese? Where is the meeting? 場所どこ？
今日はそうなんですよ。あの辺りでここはな、マルセイユ君で。
Where？
いいかな、私。ここじゃ山なのね。
さて、
どこでもいいです。
椅子持って行ってもいいやつ。これ。
何時から何時まで？
From 7 to 83.
8時半までね。はい、ありがとうございました。Thank you.
these are present. German. Oka-san over there, who came from Kitakyushu today, because this meeting is the final. This one, Hakata. data. Okay. And Orikawa-san, very delicious cake over there.
Today's cake is very, very
Very, very
special.
gorgeous.
You will be so surprised.
Oh, special, special. Big hands to her. Thank you very much. All of them recorded here. So please introduce yourself. Please.
I'm from Uyama University. I'll graduate my university in March, end of March, and after that I'll be an elementary school teacher. So I'm looking forward to teaching in English, maybe. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Big hand. Okay.
Hello, my name is Dan, and I'm originally from Australia. I live in Fukuyama, and I'm friends with Hiroshi and Toshiro, and they brought me here today. So thank you all very much for having me.
Yeah, you are later.
Hello, my name is Akiko Awa. I'm from Hiroshima. This is the second time to come here, and I heard that this is the final meeting. That's why I came here. I'm going to miss your event very, very much. This is very good. It is combined with music and English, and also friendship. That is the best way to study any languages.
Who came from Akitsu? Akitsu, yes.
I'm now 74 years old. And I am very proud that I was one of the founders of this subject.
Oh, that's right. Last evening, yesterday evening, we had that.
Mr. Makira very much motivated to learn more about Japan and English through this plan. Thank you very much.
I'm Toyota. 我叫丰田。私はトヨタです。I became a member of this association maybe over 20 years ago, I think. So that's why I'm an old member of this association. But for around 10 years, I couldn't attend this meeting due to my busy work. And nowadays, I have been to the many countries, for example, Sweden, the Netherlands, and nowadays I have the many opportunities to visit China, totally over 60 times. So I'm now studying Chinese a little. Thank you.
Okay, today is the final stage of my activity. So many images. Okay, many images came and went in my mind eye through 37 years English language presentation meeting, in which many made a speech for us. Some of them speak wonderfully, some of them so-so. But anyway, those speeches remained in my mind impressively or strongly. So I'm very happy. In 1977, it means 37 years ago, I became a teacher of English at the age of 40. Before that, I was a teacher of electronics. But as you know, after World War II, our engineering and technology is down the bottom. Most of electronics technological textbook at that time in English. So English is very familiar for me because I must study through English very difficult electronic book. So at the age of 40, I decided to be a teacher of English. Now I am very happy. I am hopping around the world, not around the world, but small world, 14 countries. Mostly have been to the United States. So United States is a very unique country. So I have learned many of unique theory to live in this world. So now I have many friends. Nowadays I have 400 friends through Skype. So two of Skype friends will come here in April and in October. So that's why I'm very happy. So, but many of the people. Okay. Noisy, very noisy. So many people supported me to do this. Some of them is executive of our organization. So today is the final stage. I'd ask some of you to make a speech for us briefly within 5 minutes, please, Mr. Yu. One by one. And Oka-san too, finally.
With the permission, I'd like to introduce our past experiences here. Unforgettable memories from 38 years ago. And we are always absence. Just a single absence. Okay? Always. We never.
At that time, he was vice principal of Higashi Senior High School.
Yes. This Onomichi is my second hometown. My original hometown is Fukuyama. And I'm working at Fukuyama City University with Miku. She is one of the students. And Dad, he comes from Fukuyama City High School. And Mr. Matsura has started a very unique business here 38 years ago. Not just English conversation class, but kind of center of global information. And this place has become very global now. There are a lot of exchanges within this culture and without our culture too, like that. Tom, yeah, expanding. And I have been asked by Mr. Matsura to succeed to his business in Fukuyama. And that title, Friendship Force, Hiroshima, Fukuyama branch. So don't be disappointed. We will continue this business in Fukuyama with the help of founder. We are also one of the founding fathers, who is Inohara. Okay, so we are doing the same thing. No change at all. Okay? Don't be discouraged. Okay? So, stay with us and live with us. Okay? Thank you.
I am Toshiro Inohara and one of the oldest members of this organization. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to Mr. Matsuura for his continuous effort, as long as 37 years, for managing and establishing this organization. We can say 37 years in one breath. But 37 years is a long time. For example, how many of you here can survive another 37 years? I cannot. I cannot. So it's a long time. And a little bit looking back the history, a little bit of history. Some 40 years ago, back in 1975, we started Fukuyama English Speaking Society, ESS, together with Mr. Yumite and some other members. And then we had a separate organization. And then we met every Saturday evening, every week in Fukuyama. And then we maybe we did some activities for about 10 years or so. I don't remember exact number of years, but something like 10 years together with Mr. Yumite. But as we get older, our responsibility of social company school has increased. And then we came to a point where we must stop and close Fukuyama ESS. And then we finally closed Fukuyama ESS and then came to this organization with the money we have saved over the past 10 years. And we donated all the money, not much money, but all the money from
Thank you very
Fukuyama
much.
ESS to this organization and became the official member of this lounge together with Mr. Yumite. That was about maybe 30 years ago. And so I'm not a member of with 37 years of history, but I have been here well over 30 years. And when I first joined the organization, this lounge, I felt pretty much out of the place because all around me were very eminent English teachers like Mr. Yumite, Mr. Matsuura, and I was a mediocre salary. So pretty much out of the place. But I decided to continue because of the following 3 reasons. One is to expand my horizon. I lived in small business world, and every day we had kind of shop talk about business only, nothing else coming from outside world. So this is a very nice place to, expand my horizon. The second is to improve my faculty of English, because my job was to international procurement. So language used in my business is none other than English. So like it or not, I have to speak and use English in my everyday work. So to improve my English, I attended here. And lastly, this place was kind of retreat. I can relax and let off steam. While over the past 1 month, I came here once a month, and I let off steam and get refreshed and work again. So with 3 reasons, I decided to continue. And so I am one of the oldest members, and yet I was unable to contribute too much, relying too much on Mr. Matsuura. I just came and sit back and listen, very relaxed. Thank you. Thanks to Mr. Matsuura.
Thank you.
But one of the our responsibility is to continue this legend. This is kind of legend. Legacy. So we should continue, as Mr. Yumite mentioned, we should continue this legacy to the next generation. Mr. Matsuura and I are not so much apart, maybe 10 years younger. So I will be stopgap and then hand over to the next generation. Thank you again,
Yes.
Mr. Matsuura, for
Thank
your
you.
continued effort.
Thank you very much. じゃあ、新谷さん。
I have nothing more to say. But I'm now 74 years in the road. I still remember the occasion when I first met a genuine speaker of English. That was about how many years ago? 50 years ago. And I was overwhelmed by her genuine English and her way of speaking English. That's the starting point of my studying English. It has been a long history. Thank you very much.
His life motto is I can because I think I can. Okay, Oka-san. She came here far away from Kita-Kyushu. どうぞ座ってください。どうぞ。どうぞどうぞ、ここ座ってください。こっちの方、ここまだ一人座りますか。はい。どうぞ、どうぞ、どうぞ。これもこっち持ってきます。Okay, before I will speak, coffee break. Okay, a couple of minutes. ちょっとコーヒーお願いします。
岡さんですね。
電車で。
ちょっといいです。
Could we perhaps start with a video from YouTube? Of course.
一番奥から行った方がいいじゃないですかね。メンバーも適当に置いといて撮ってもらいましょうね。徐々にこうじゃもうねリレーで自分でも悪いけど今さリレーで今日はちょっと多いしほらね時間が短縮でいいわ。だからもうお盆でこうしていいの狭い大きなお盆運ぶのカップが消えてしまった。新しいからいいのよ。12時ぐらいから来て食べてたのね。いいからだったな。言われると思う。いや私はいいんです。なんちゃって。
そうなんですか。
私はもう30ほど超えた方がいいかな。素晴らしい。
So, would you please tell quick? So you will use PowerPoint.
Yeah, the PowerPoint downstairs,
You have a mouse, wireless mouse?
No.
Okay, please tell.
I'll tell you when to go. If I do like this. If I go like this, it means quick.
So today, too crowded.
Yeah.
And your unique speech theme is very nice.
I hope so. I'll try and keep it
That
nice.
is final.
I saw this a couple of weeks ago, and it's quite funny, so it might be a good thing to start. Just get everyone in the mood.
中 をゲストが英語で話してたから。
あ、本当にあります。
うまくなるはずがないから。向こうの人も若い人みんな英語大丈夫だから。
你去哪？in在中国。言いたいことわかる。
わかるわかる。
先生、ここ置いてください。
はい、ありがとうございます。
これ、ミキさんとこう、上にちょっと。
クイズ。もらってるから、ちょっとよく座ってる。それでこう入ってるからよくわかんない。
コーヒーそちらありますか？
先生、あれだから
一つ。
はい、一つじゃあ。
ありますよ。大丈夫です。
Sorry. Do you have coffee?
I enjoy. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
あ、一個欲しいな。待って、まだいるんでしょ？あと何個かな？ないし、一個じゃあ、ください。これ今の、今入れたとこ。はい、すいません、ありがとうございます。
Oh, yes, sorry. I do. Sorry, yes, I do.
それはスタン
No, I don't have a wife. No, I have a girlfriend. But I met her in but she's living in Ireland. Yeah, no, I met her here. It's a little strange. I came to Japan and I met her about a year ago. And she was accepted to work in working holiday as well. So in November she went to Ireland. So we kind of swapped places. Yeah. So I saw her.
すみません、絡んなかった。あります。ちょっと、わかったんていかんから、これに聞きたい人、聞きましたよ。
あ、これ持ってきていいかね、この赤さん。
I would say there's a good job.
もう一つ言われたけど、あれって聞くの
ここは今日は英語の会だから。
これやったら、もうそれ気になってる。
I go at least twice a month. At least twice a month. Yeah.
78歳だからね、もういい加減、昔だったら活躍できるぐらいの年齢だから、ちょっと歌うんでもちょっとしんどいね。もうちょっと声が出る予定だったんだけど、ちょっとやっぱりね、いろいろ動いたから。はいはい。すみません、年やってくれる。いつもすみませんね。ありがとうございます。もう皆さんでお礼を差し上げていかんな。そういうね、長い間やってくれた。本当にね。みんな人の力持ちで。皆さん。皆さん、座る椅子があるから。座る椅子がある。ちょっとね。ちょっと座る椅子がありますかね。 すみません。聞いていただいて。皆さんもういいですか？こっち来てください。ありがとうございます。コーヒー飲んでください。
小学校でしょ。Now I'm teaching some students. Now they're becoming high school.
Don't worry about me.
これはどなたでしたっけ？チョコレートはどなたでしたかね、小田さん。
マキビさん。
I was working on it. I didn't know. I saw you come in and I thought, oh, yeah. But I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I met up with Sato Sensei last year. Last year was her last year. She retired.
座るとこあります？座るとこあります？Okay, じゃあ、shall we start? Big hand to her, to him. To him. Not to her, to him.
Shall we start?
Big hand again.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Legg. I will give you a full self-introduction later. But today I want to talk about why Japanese people or Japanese students have difficulty speaking English. Our topic today. Why I think Japanese students struggle sometimes to speak English. So the title of the talk is How Are You? I'm Fine, Thank You, and You, which you may have heard. I get students every day will come up to me and say, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, and you.
Good start.
It is a good start. Yeah. It is a good start. Any student speaking English to me is a great start. So I thought just to get things started, there was a video that I found on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, which you may have seen before. I think it's quite funny. It sort of connects to our topic a little bit, but I thought it would be a good way to get us started. So it's a few minutes long, so I think we'll start by watching the video. If that's okay. That's what it sounds.
10ページ左に まあ、とりあえず波状を注意するように波状に珍しいから。はい、いくよ。じゃあ、どっち目、何見て、10ページ。授業中にガンガンでダメだもん、ガンガンでだわ。はい、読んでみて、10ページ。
This is my father.
それは、
This is my mother.
それじゃあ僕は英語通じないよ、お前。通じないよ、はっきり言って、まずゆっくり。
This is my mother.
そのマザーの始まり。This is my father. This is my father.
This is my father.
次言ってみて。
Who's this?
Huh?
Who's this? It's my uncle.
アンクルの始まり。It's my uncle. アンチル。チリじゃない、アンチル。アンチル。Good. はい、さっきですよ。選んでみて。同じところに。整理がいね。選んでみて。
This is my father. This is my mother.
お前で、前の聞いてないのか、お前は。発音が違うんだから。This is my father. This is my father.
This is my father.
発音がお前おかしい。Father. This is.
This is my father.
The father. Father.そうそう。はい。
Who's this?
その次、伸ばしたらお前、この2行目。
This is my mother.
Mother. This is my mother. お前。
This is my mother.
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 そうそう、
Who's this?
Who's this? Who's
It's my uncle.
あんこだよ。それはあんこ。これ日本のあんこ、甘いやつ。違う。It's my uncle. It's my uncle.
It's my uncle.
そう。その次やった。次の次。
He's a high school teacher.
どうすらそう発があるから、お前はな。もっとはっきり分かりやすく言えわ。He's a high school teacher. He's a high school. High school.
High school.
そう、ハイスクールティーチャー。Teacher. Very good. はい、そうやってください。男性は、あいつとちょっとやってください。はい、次のページ。こっち行ってるから。何見てんだよ。読んで。
This is Fred. He's my brother.
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 Brother. わかんねえな。じゃあ違う日本語教えてやる。日本語言ってみな。私の言うせ。小池バカじゃねえよ。発音の強になってないよ、お前はな。おい、笑ってまじゃないよ。お前やってみな。はい。教科書でいいから。日本語教えてやる、日本語。きれいな日本語な。なんだ君は。これやれ。なんだ君は。もっとですよ。なんだ君は。なんだ君は。手こいたらいかないんだよ。小池。僕だけよ。僕だけ。小池。バカじゃねえよく覚えてくれね、レスリーね。はい、教授はこれで。はい、立って。 Oh my God. No. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay. Yeah. So, thankfully, classes are not like that. I can tell you. At high school these days, classes are not like that. Okay. So things are much better than that. But I think we'll talk a little bit later about how things like katakana in the classroom can cause some difficulties for students. Students are used to sometimes speaking with katakana. They'll see a word like bed written. They'll say beddo, for example. But I think actually there's an opportunity there to use katakana to help students to speak better English and take advantage of the fact that there are many words in English and Japanese that are similar, and use that to help students. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, so there we go. This is our opening slide. Why can't Japanese students speak English? Okay. Now, firstly, it's certainly not the case that all Japanese students can't speak English. We have some students who are very good at speaking English. There are students that make an effort, even if they haven't traveled abroad, they make an effort to learn English. They're interested in English music or films. Most of my students know the lyrics to Frozen in English because they've watched it so many times. So I think there are Japanese students who can speak English. But we'll have a look at some of the reasons. And I think the one big reason why Japanese students struggle to speak English in this presentation. Okay. Okay, so I'll start with an outline of what I want to talk about today. Firstly, this is an overview. It's not a scientific study. It's based on my limited experience of being in Japan. I've been in Japan for about a year and a half. So it's not a scientific study. It's based on the schools that I teach in and my general impressions, and talking to teachers and colleagues and others about their experience, both in school and outside of the classroom. What I would like, rather than just me talk for an hour and then we do some questions, there are some points after each slide where I think it would be nice to discuss this point or discuss the issue that we're talking about. So I think we'll do a sort of a Q&A as we go, if that's okay. So if you have questions, if you could wait until the end of the slide, and then we'll talk about each point as we go. I think that's better than just me talking for an hour. It's nice and warm in here. It's Sunday. I don't want people to fall asleep. No? This is not a rant either. This is not me saying that everything is terrible. I don't even necessarily believe that English is vital for a lot of students. I think it's admirable that every student in Japan studies English to the extent that they do. For a lot of students, there's really no need for them to use English after they leave school. A lot of students will not use English again. So I do think it's admirable that such an effort is made for Japanese students to learn English. So it's not a rant. It's not saying that everything is bad. I don't think it is. I'll talk about some myths. Okay, some myths. I think these are things that I often hear as to reasons why Japanese students can't speak English or they struggle to speak English. And I don't think these are true. So I'm going to talk about those. And then I'll talk about some contributory factors. So some of the reasons I think why they struggle or why it's difficult. And then I think I'll try to identify the key issue, the main reason, or the biggest reason. Perhaps not the only reason, but I think the biggest reason why speaking is difficult and why speaking is not a big area of emphasis in schools. I will propose a solution, an ideal world solution, a way of solving the problem or trying to solve the problem. And then finally there are some more ideas, some more things to think about. And I'd like to talk about that last one, some more ideas in some detail with you. So some things that we could possibly do to encourage Japanese students to speak more, some ideas that I came up with. And then we'll have a general question and answer, Q&A, about anything that you would like to talk about this or about anything, I don't mind. So that's what we're going to do with regards to the talk. That's the outline.
Anything to do with a bird picture?
No, I searched for outline, or step by step, I think I searched for. And this was a step-by-step drawing of how to draw a bird. So these are the steps that we're going to go through today. Yeah. It's a little abstract.
I see.
A little abstract. Yeah. So the idea is step by step. We're going to work through step by step.
Don't jump into conclusion.
Exactly. I hopefully will cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and at the end we'll have a beautiful bird. Is what I'm hoping. But we'll see. Huh? We'll see. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I should start with some credits. So there are some people that have helped me, not just to put this presentation together, but also in sort of forming the ideas and passing ideas back and forward. To make sure that I wasn't being crazy. So the first one is Gaijin Pot. I don't know if you've heard of Gaijin Pot. It's a website that sort of presents issues and news in Japan, but from a Gaijin perspective, I suppose. I think some of their articles have ended up in the major Japanese newspapers. They often write articles that are quite strong opinion. There was a fantastic article about monster parents, which was very entertaining. It's worth a read. Some of the complaints of monster parents to schools were really, really very funny. So Gaijin Pot, one of their writers, a Japanese student who went to live in America, wrote a short article about why Japanese students can't speak English.
Where are they? They are in Tokyo?
I don't know. I know it has an online, it's quite a big online presence. I would imagine it's Tokyo, probably. And so this article, why can't Japanese students speak English? After this article, there's a YouTube channel called My Argonauts, which is run by an American teacher of English who's lived in Japan for 9 years. And he posts about daily life in Japan. And he linked to this article on Gaijin Pot and did a really interesting video on YouTube about his thoughts. So some of my presentation has been informed by that. Obviously, friends and colleagues, we talk about this a lot. We talk about, the issues that we have at school and how to make things better in the classroom and how to try out new ideas, and again with colleagues at school. And then Yuko Kinoshita is my ever-suffering girlfriend who talked to me on Skype for about 3 hours about this last night. She's living in Dublin at the moment.
Dublin.
So she's in Dublin for a year. So she listened to all my ideas and then said, "No, you're talking rubbish. It's not like that," or gave me some ideas about what it was like at her school and some of the things that she felt. So that's also informed a lot of the presentation. So I said I'd give her some credit. So there you go.
Are you from Ireland?
No, I'm from London. I'm from the UK. But I met Yuko here, but then she's gone to Ireland to work for a year. So we've like swapped places. So yeah, but the the world is small these days, so it's not too difficult. Okay, fantastic. So this is me. I chose a suitably stupid picture. I'll do my short jikoshokai, my self-introduction. I'm 27 years old. I'm from London in England. Yeah. So I was born 10 years after this society started. Scary, huh? So yeah, I'm 27 years old. I'm from London in the UK, and I've been in Japan for a year and a half. I teach at 2 senior high schools, one in Mihara, and the other a very low-level school in Tode, near Fukuyama, school called Ashina Manabi Gakuren Kotodako. So I teach there. It's a very different teaching experience to Mihara Koko. In terms of my background, I studied law at university in London, and then I went to work for a while in Ecuador, in South America, and I've been to a lot of different countries, and I came back to the UK and worked in the finance sector for about 3 years, and decided that I wanted to do something useful, something that made me feel happy when I went to bed at night. So I decided to take some teaching qualifications and become a teacher and move to Japan. So this is my first teaching job in Japan, and I've been here for a year and a half. I have a real interest in foreign languages and language learning. I spent most of my free time before university and after university sat in language schools in different parts of the world, learning French, Spanish, German, Russian. Yeah, I've forgotten a lot of Russian. So I suppose I think I've got experience from both sides, from being the teacher, but also being someone who's in a language learning environment where I'm struggling, and I'm sitting on the other side of the table and trying to work out how the language works. I think perhaps where I can't empathize with the students so much is that I love learning languages. I always have loved learning languages. I find it really interesting. So I find it difficult to empathize with unmotivated students because I've never found myself in that position. I could empathize with them in a maths class because I hated maths. everyone hates maths, right? So from that perspective, I can empathize with them, but not when it comes to learning a language, because I find the language is fascinating and how it works.
How many languages can you manipulate now?
So French and Spanish are fluent, more or less. German is good. Russian is rusty, we say. Rusty. Rusty. I've forgotten of it. And then if you can speak French and Spanish, you can read articles online in Italian or Portuguese or other languages. And a little Japanese, of course. So yeah, I find languages fascinating, genuinely fascinating how they work. And once you've learned one, it's so easy to learn another. It's much, much easier when you've learned a foreign language to learn another. So that's me. Yeah, that's me. Okay, we'll get to the next one. That's the time. Okay. So this is just my view. Okay. I think speaking is the most important language skill. I'm not saying that English is vital for Japanese students, but what I am saying is that if you want to put the effort into learning English, the vast majority of your time should be spent learning to speak English. Because English is a tool for communication. That's the point of a language. The point of a language is to enable you to speak to other people, in my view. I think the last time I wrote a letter to someone was a thank you letter to my grandma for a birthday present when I was 7. I don't think I've written a letter to anyone in 20 years. So learning to write letters in a foreign language, I think is so much less useful than learning to speak. I would be quite happy to be in an environment where the students never get a textbook and they just speak English. I think that could be really beneficial. And I found from learning Japanese, or from being in Japan, that in fact speaking helps your reading and writing. Speaking should be the starting point, I think. Once you learn to speak a language, you understand how it works, you pick up those things. When it comes to reading it, you can get by. You can use a dictionary for the words you don't know, and you have an understanding of how the language works when you can speak it. You can get people who are able to write and read fluently in English, but can't speak at all. If you find someone who can speak English, the chances are they can also read and write. Certainly read. Writing can be difficult, but you certainly should be able to read. So speaking helps understand the language. And that's what opens doors. When you go to a party and there's someone there who's an English speaker, or you meet foreigners, or when it comes to the business world, for example, it's speaking which is going to get you ahead. And speaking is what's going to enable you to make relationships with people. So I think speaking is the most important skill. Reading, writing, and listening are obviously very important as well. You know, to have full mastery of the language, you need those things. But the emphasis, I think, should be on speaking. Should be speaking. Okay. That's it. Okay. Some myths. Okay. Some myths. This is in this section. We're going to explore some myths, some commonly held views. Okay, about why Japanese students can't speak English. Okay, so some of the things that people often say, oh, Japanese people can't speak English because, etc. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think some of those are true. So you'll hear them occasionally. Someone say, oh, the Japanese government doesn't spend any money on English education, so no one can speak English. I think I'm going to try and explain why I think these things are not reasons, why they're myths, why they're not reasons. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Myth number one. Okay. The Japanese government doesn't care about English education. Okay. The Japanese government doesn't care about English education. I've heard that a few times. People said, oh, they don't care about people speaking English. They're not bothered about English education. They just want Japanese education, that's all. I don't think that's true at all. I think the Japanese government really, really does care about English education. The amount of investment that has been made in programs, like my program, the JET program, for example, over the last 25 years it's been running, is amazing. There's no other program like it in the world. There's somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 JETs that are currently working in high schools, junior high schools, and now elementary schools, and even some nursery schools across Japan. When you think of the size of that program, the costs of running that program, the amount of investment that has been made into this program over 25 years, it's a huge amount of time, effort, money, resources. So, and it's not just the JET program as well. There's other programs, there's other dispatch companies. You know, most schools in Japan now have a foreign English language teacher that will come on a regular basis to that school. Some schools have a teacher who is there every day. Other schools will get them on a rotation. But it means that basically every Japanese student in the last probably 15 years, since the program has been really big, almost every Japanese student who's gone through that system will have had some exposure to a foreigner and some exposure to a native language teacher in terms of English education. And obviously it was before my time, but I don't believe before this program was initiated that most Japanese students would ever have met a foreigner up until the time they left university, or left school, or left university. I think another point is that there seems to be a growing sense that the government realizes and appreciates that we are living in a more and more globalized society. You hear this word a lot. You hear the word global a lot. There is very much a sense that, you know, the world is becoming smaller. You know, companies and countries are becoming much more connected, and the government recognizes that and is very big to push this agenda. You know, it's a very important thing that we live in this global society, and in order to do that, the reality is that the global language of today is English. That is what most business-to-business negotiations are conducted in, at least in Europe. So, you know, English is vital, and the government sees that it is vital. There is competition in Asia from China, Korea, other Asian nations, places like Thailand, for example, Vietnam. And if you look at those countries, Korea and China in particular, there is also a big push for those students to learn English. They have similar sort of programs, similar sort of initiatives in schools in Korea and China. And English is a really big part of their curriculum at school. So I think the Japanese government is concerned. They don't want Japanese students to be left behind. They want to be able to compete with China, Korea, other Asian nations, as they should. They always have. And the last point is the 2020 Olympics. Japan is going to be on show to the world. It is possibly the most global event you can possibly hold. In fact, as a response to the winning of the 2020 Olympics, for the first time there are now jets in Tokyo, in the city. For the first time in 25 years, they hired 100 foreign teachers. For the first time, 100 foreign teachers are now teaching in Tokyo, in the city, through the JET program. So the Tokyo 2020 Olympics may be the catalyst, maybe the thing which you know gives a new energy to this desire to learn English in Japan. And I think it might be a turning point, perhaps, in sort of a new push for Japanese students to learn English.
And Tokyo Metropolitan Government has decided to establish an English-speaking village.
Oh, really? Oh, yes, I had read about this.
In 2018.
2018.
English village?
Yeah. English-speaking village.
Speaking village. Where in Tokyo?
I'm not sure, but
Where now?
I think they have failed.
Really?
In promoting, Seoul High.
Oh, I see.
Super English Language High School in metropolitan area. That was the Tokyo Kokusai Koku.
Oh, I see.
But it's not so efficient.
Yeah.
So they are very disappointed.
Yeah.
And changed their policy.
Right.
To start.
An English village.
Yes.
I see. Because Korea already has an English village. Very well. Yeah. Or two.
Yeah, in Taiwan.
In Taiwan as well. I see. I know there has been talk about setting up one in Osaka as well. So yes, very, very interesting point. This English village concept could be very interesting indeed.
So this is a time of drastic change in idea.
Yes.
Awareness.
Yes.
Yeah. Hiroshima is very good such as this. Hiroshima is very famous. That is like Tokyo.
Yes.
Hiroshima is very famous for foreigner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Hiroshima is a good situation. English village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Yes. I think this is exactly the sort of thing that people that believe in English speaking as a skill. It's just the sort of thing we want to hear about. It's the sort of thing we want to see. Because you don't create an English village so that everyone can sit and study grammar. That's not the point. The point is so that people are comfortable speaking English and have an environment where they can speak English. So I think these are a really good start. Encourage people to speak English, create an environment whereby they have an opportunity to speak English all the time. I think the danger, perhaps, of creating this village is that you can focus so much on the village and forget about what's happening outside. So I think you have to try and encourage English speaking more generally as well. I think the sort of people that would say, I'm going to live in an English village, they probably would find opportunities anyway to speak English.
By the same token,
Yeah.
they already started
Yes.
what they call Kidzania.
Kidzania. Okay. I don't know about Kidzania.
Children's kingdom, where they can get some internship.
I see.
Professionally, like firefighters,
Yeah.
bank clerks, station clerks, things like that.
Yes.
To prepare themselves for starting their, career.
I see.
Future career.
Yes.
Which includes English speaking,
Oh, that's great. That's really good. That's great. Kidzania.
Kidzania.
Okay, that's cool.
Hyogo
and Tokyo. Oh, it's exciting to hear about these things. It's really exciting to hear about these things. So yeah, I think these things are exactly the sort of thing that show the government does care about English education. They really do care. They invest lots of time and money in things like these programs and things like English Village and bringing the Olympics to Japan. I think there is. I think this is a myth. They really do care about these things.
Minister of Education, Mr. Uemura, is very advanced in thinking, creating, under Abenomics.
I see.
Okay? So he's very open-minded, very creative in
Yes.
thinking.
Yeah, and I think that's important. It's important. We have to look at things critically, the way that things have been for the last 25 years, and take the good things and change the bad things.
Yeah.
And look to the good things as inspiration to create more good things. I think. Okay. Any more questions or comments about this one?
This is a kind of critical thinking about that English village.
Yeah.
English village still have to confine students in some one place, but students, people are living in the community. And in that case, we are using many kind of languages, especially in Japan, Japanese and English. But still, confinement is the best way to make the students motivated to speak only in English or.
I think yeah, total we call it total immersion. Total immersion in the language is great. It's really good. But I have some theories about this, but I think total immersion is great if you have motivated students. It doesn't necessarily work in schools where you have unmotivated students. So you have to find a balance, I think. I think you have to find a balance.
In Korea, their curriculum is what we call school curriculum.
Yeah.
School English. But they are kind of discouraged. They didn't see any improvement. So they established a, English-speaking village outside, ordinary society, like Jeju Island. That's what we call special policy district. With the British colleges established in Jeju Island. Their curriculum is, universal. The English is a matter of course.
Yeah. The classes are taught in English, etc.
That's right.
Okay, I will talk about that later.
Okay.
Not specifically that, but I'll talk about something like that.
So the professional, they say it is what they call a life curriculum.
I see.
Not school curriculum.
So more focused on practical things.
As life English.
I see.
Not school English. School English has self-imposed some limitation, so they have to expand to life curriculum.
But the education, expectation of the education from parents who have money are not like Japan, because Korea, they emphasize more education for the children. Sometimes they borrow a lot of money to invest on the children's education.
And hagwons, I think they're called, the juku style things in Korea.
Because there's a big difference becoming a winner and loser in Korea.
Yes.
In Japan, not much gap. Even though many people say there is a working poor, increasing in Japan, but in Korea, rich people is really rich, but the poor people is really poor.
Yes.
So, and when I spoke with a Korean friend, they said there is a lot of students who spend many hours in the school or cram school.
Yes.
and some of them sometimes are so desperate, so they kill themselves.
Yeah,
because
it's,
they don't want to study
the
anymore.
pressure is if you think pressure is bad in Japan with the Sentashiken, it was today and yesterday, if you think it's bad in Japan, it's much, much worse in Korea, from what I understand. Their university entrance exam is very, 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 very stressful, I think, for students.
And some maybe the half of the Korean students who study in English or who study in the United States, they are failures, but their parents are rich, so
Yeah.
they study.
Ah, I see. That makes sense as well.
So, and they, since their parents is rich, and when they come back with the idea of the American culture,
yeah.
they already have a status as a rich kids.
Yeah.
Like Hyundai.
Yeah.
Hyundai, Korean Air. Now they have a problem, right?
There's a problem with Korean Air.
No, and the daughter
yeah.
of the Korean Air.
Yeah.
She's 38 or 37, and but she is already vice president. Why? Because she was the daughter of the founder.
Don't say I'm flying with Korean Air.
So, like that, if they study abroad,
yeah.
and if their parents is already owned their big company,
yeah.
then they can have a power.
Yeah, exactly.
So they can easily bring their ideas in the Western culture, but in Japan, it's not impossible.
Yeah,
Even though some case maybe there is, but
yeah. We'll talk a little bit later about maybe some of the differences between other Asian cultures and Japanese culture, and how I think that links in sometimes to students struggling to speak English. So we'll talk about that a bit later as well. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, myth number 2. Japanese students don't have enough time to study English. I don't think this is true at all. When we look at the number of lessons that are devoted to English, the number of lessons Japanese students have in English per week, most students at my schools will study English at least 5 times per week. That means that 15 to 20% of all the studying they do at school is English. Okay? So there is time to learn foreign languages. There is time to learn English. They are also starting earlier and earlier. So now I believe that students begin learning English, at least some conversational sort of games and songs, and alphabet and colors, etc., from the last year of elementary school. Before it was just junior high school they started, and now they start as early as elementary school. What I will say about enough time is that the amount of material, so the amount of different things that they are expected to cover is very high. There's a large amount of material. So though there's a lot of time, there's also lots of different material. And it's difficult to go back over stuff you've learned before. You'll skip from one thing to the next thing in order to cover everything in the syllabus. And there's not many opportunities to practice, to reinforce what you've learned already. So to give an example, the past tense, the simple past tense, I went. Sometimes we'll be given as much time in the classroom as Kakokanryo Shinkoke, for example. What's a Kakokanryo Shinkoke? Past perfect progressive tense. If you give party trick. So if you give the same amount of time to those things, because you have to cover everything, how many times a day do I use Kakokanryo Shinkoke? Maybe once, if at all. How many times do I use the past tense? All the time. Countless times per day. And also, I can express myself without using Kakokanryo Shinkoke. I just use the past tense and some time phrase. You can just, so the amount of time spent on each part. Yeah, don't ask me in Japanese. So if you spend, I think that there is a need to spend more time on some of the simple stuff. I think there's such a race to cover everything. There's so many different things to cover that sometimes it seems like there's not enough time. But I think there is enough time to do the studying. But I think we need to focus on allowing the students to get the basics right. So understanding sort of past tense, present tense, future tense, questions. With those 4, you can have a conversation about anything with any native speaker. If you know the present tense, the past tense, the future tense, and questions, you can ask a question about anything. And that should be enough. So those 4 should be, as we say in English, bread and butter. It's every day. Bread and butter. That should be your everyday. The students should be any level of student should be comfortable with past tense, present tense, future tense, and questions. And let's not worry about Kakokan Any thoughts about this? What about your experiences at school? Did you find it the same? Any thoughts?
I have
Yes.
to developing speaking skill
Yes.
is not our aim to learn English, because we have to just develop speaking ability is a kind of castle in a quicksand. I understand.
Yeah.
Because we have to learn about the cultural background.
Yeah.
We have many ingredients to speak out in English.
Yes.
So we have to develop our foundation
Yes.
of the knowledge,
Yes.
our history, our culture, and many things.
Yeah.
And also to learn another country's culture
Yes.
and histories.
Yes.
So that is we have get a Sisoras,
Ah,
you know,
yes.
in Greece,
Yes.
Sisoras. So we have there so many cabinet of the furniture.
Yes.
So we can use English and speak out in more fluently.
Yes.
So that I think that is the most important thing to learn original history and other countries' history.
Yes.
And we have shared their own culture
Yes.
and have to speak out
Yes.
in English.
I think so as well, and I think that actually the Japanese education system at the moment is very good at educating about different countries and different cultures. A lot of the textbooks will talk about stuff that's happening in the UK, or talk about, you know, like British food or American food or those sorts of interesting topics. But I think we need to focus on choosing simple English to talk about those things and getting students comfortable with simple English. Because if they go on the internet at home, most of the English they will find to talk about those subjects is simple English or simple enough English. So I think you have to give them the simple tools to find out about those things for themselves. But I agree, the culture side is very important, very important. Learning about, you know, a different way of thinking. Because if you understand the culture, it gives you a good basis to understand the language. I struggle to see how anyone could learn Japanese, really learn Japanese and how to use it without spending at least some time here. Because there are certain things you can't learn in the classroom. You have to experience them for yourself. How do you learn Otsukare-sama desu in a classroom in London? How do you learn when to use that? How do you learn shitsureshimasu in a classroom in London? You can't learn that from a textbook. You have to experience it for yourself. So I think, yeah, the culture is very important, very important.
But I think the cheapest way to teach English is like Holland. Like when they are using the one language, then English. Then when they are speaking in English, then the
subtitles.
Yeah, subtitle is a caption. Is the best way and the cheapest way.
Well, in fact, in Holland, my brother's girlfriend is from Holland. It's an international family. So in Holland, in fact, the level of English is so high. A lot of TV programs in English don't even bother with subtitles. So they'll show a TV program from the UK or from America, and they don't even put subtitles, because most people in Holland, even though they speak Dutch to each other, can switch into English with no problem. because they're brought up with English on TV, at school, radio, stuff they read in the news. There's English everywhere, so it's not a big deal for them. They just learn it, and most people in Holland can speak really good English. Most of them can, because there's nothing strange about it. There's nothing difficult about for a young person to learn a foreign language. I wonder sometimes if, because Japanese is so complicated, and Japanese people spend such a long time learning Japanese. I mean, they're still learning kanji well into senior high school. They're learning how to write their own language. I wonder if the Japanese mindset is that all languages are as difficult as Japanese is. I wonder if that's the mindset. What do you think?
Also, Chinese is same.
Yeah, Chinese
when I
is-
went to the Singapore, and then many Singaporeans they speak Chinese, and I asked, can you write the Chinese? They said no, only speaking.
Ah, I see.
And it depends on the where your origin come from, or who is your wife or husband. Depend on the only speaking or
Yes.
just broken Chinese,
Yes.
or you could able to write or read.
Yes, that's true.
So, and also their English is not so good. When I took the seminars for about 2 weeks, and Singaporeans, I was studying together with them. Their English not so good.
Really?
And this is we are Singlish or something.
Oh, I
And
see.
they are reading, writing good, but speaking or not so good.
Yeah.
Especially except for that they are doing the business internationally.
Oh, you see, well, back in Europe, when people talk about English in Asia, then people say, "Oh, no one in Asia can speak English except the Singaporeans. They all speak perfect English." Oh, I see. So in fact, there's some Singlish around.
Yeah, even when I studied 2 weeks in the Walsall Maritime University in Southampton.
Southampton?
Yes.
In the UK?
Yeah.
That's my shushin. That's where I'm from.
There is two Singaporeans, but for me, very difficult to understand their English. But people in UK perfectly understand.
Even Southampton, Ben. Okay. Wow. Oh, how interesting. Fantastic.
So, and also there's Americans. Then there's instructors have a heavy accent because he's from where? Forgot, but even the UK they have a maybe Scotland accent. So
we don't understand either.
Singaporean government is trying to improve their people to correct their English.
Oh, I see.
It's so messy.
Really?
Yes.
I see. But they speak very fluently.
Yes,
They understand,
Oh,
but
I
when they
see.
speak, their English pronunciation is not so good.
I frequently had a phone from a Singapore office. I almost can't understand. Also,
Really?
emails and
But much better than Japanese people.
Well, definitely better than I took a flight back with Air China from Frankfurt to Osaka recently, and their announcements in English, I could not understand a word, because I think they're taught say this phrase rather than having any understanding of English, but Japan is not anywhere near the bottom, anywhere near. Like Japanese people speaking English, we'll talk about katakana in a bit, but it's understandable. It's understandable. Certainly, it's understandable.
Then where is standard pronunciation English? Where?
My country.
My country.
Sorry.
British English, American English, and Australian English not same because
No.
maybe British and Australian close, but the American English very different, and Australian also the accent is typical. So if you don't have experience with speaking with Australian, sometimes you don't understand.
That's why now we need international English. Yeah.
Yes, maybe Japanese English is maybe standard.
I would love that. That would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Several times I stayed the homestead in UK.
Yeah.
So I can't understand. My host mother said to me, "Let's go get a petrol." I think that pet food.
Petrol, gas, yeah? Gas,
Yes,
gasoline.
yes.
Yeah.
I totally I can understand. So I think she got a pet food.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
petrol.
Sometimes I take the bus in London and I hear people talking. I have no idea what they're talking about. No idea. Yeah. It's
That's
very.
why you said that speaking is most important part of language rather than reading or writing. But I think that hearing is also very, very important.
Of course,
aspect
yeah, of course, yeah.
Without understanding what other people are saying, that's nothing.
Yeah.
It is very tough time for me to stay that high and not north of the UK.
Yeah, the north is quite difficult. There's a lot of local dialect, which can be quite difficult.
And also I stayed in United States in the mid-south.
Oh, right.
So I can't understand.
But they speak slowly.
But southern drawl is I can't understand. People who taxi driver or something, I can understand that the local people can speak the very different language of English. Deep south.
Yeah, we say English is a global language, but there's many different types of English, so it can be difficult, even for native speakers, to understand what someone is saying. But if you can speak, you can say, "Sorry, I don't understand. Could you tell me in a different way?" So yeah.
Hi. How many dialects?
Dialects
in your country?
Oh,
in Japan too. Kansai Ben, Kanto Ben, Japan too.
What about Nagoya Ben?
Nagoya.
Oh, lots. Many different. Many.
You can't count it, right?
No, and they sound very different as well. Yeah, so they're very, very different.
Churchill said that the English is divided to common language.
Yeah, north and south.
Yes.
Yeah, very true. Okay, let's go on to the next one, shall we? I think it's myth number 3. Okay, finally we got here. Myth number 3. Katakana stops students speaking English. Okay? I would agree that katakana stops students speaking perfect English. But I don't think it stops students speaking English. I've put Jason at my Argonauts because in his video that I talked about on YouTube, he says the #1 reason he thinks Japanese students can't speak English is katakana. And I don't think that's the case. I really don't. Sometimes it can be difficult. It takes a while to get used to and I went to the school at the weekend. But most native speakers can understand that. And Japanese students can understand each other when they speak like that. If I say, "What time did you go to bed?" they say, "Oh, shit, I don't know. I don't understand." I say, "What time did you go to bed, though?" So, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. So I don't think it affects the understanding too much. I genuinely think that katakana is a missed opportunity to show Japanese students how many similar words there are. How many similar words there are. And if you get to know, as I do when I see words in Japanese, my ability to guess the katakana equivalent of an English word is getting better every day. Okay? So if you show students that there's the link between bedo and bed, then when they see hedo, they'll think, head. So you can use it as an opportunity to bridge a gap between the two languages, I think. And I think it's not true that katakana makes it more difficult. I think katakana actually should make it easier. And once you've got someone who is at a good level and a good fluency level of speaking English, even if they speak with very Japanese pronunciation is quite easy to correct. They just have to listen. They listen, understand, hear these words, and then try to replicate them. I don't personally understand why such an emphasis is made on pronunciation at an early stage. I think pronunciation mistakes are okay, but the focus should be on fluency. I don't believe that katakana stops students speaking English. I think it has the real capacity to help, to show that the languages are not so different. I love it every time I find out a word in Japanese is in katakana. There's one less word I have to learn. And I think that there's a real opportunity there for students to use katakana as a way to building their vocabulary, building the amount of words they know and are able to use in some form. And it doesn't matter if they say bedo. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, you just deduct vowels from the Japanese pronunciation into English.
I wish it were that simple. So say bedo and then stop after the D. Bed, just don't say o. But the students, they find it difficult. But yeah, you're right. It's simply a case of removing a vowel at the end. And give them, sorry.
I think katakana English sometimes advantage and sometimes disadvantage because some of them, or I'd say many of them, are changed into different Japanese. For example, clean puff.
Yeah.
We say shukurim.
Shukurim.
Which is two totally different words.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful.
But we use the same in English. It's a French word, so we would understand it. Yeah. Shoe cream is from French. Shoe meaning like foie foie. Yeah. Shoe.
French.
So we have to be always careful.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sometimes we can take advantage of the
Yes.
katakana.
Yes.
But sometimes be careful
Yes.
about usage.
Yes. Yeah. But I think that comes into students learning from their mistakes. It's okay for them to make mistakes with katakana, I think. And then they can learn that actually you can't say half the pastry or whatever.
In your case, you are living here in Japan, and all the time you are listening to Japanese English. That's why katakana English is okay. But in the world society, does it work?
It doesn't.
Really? Do you not think so?
I banned katakana in my classes.
Really?
Yeah, completely.
I don't have a problem with it at all.
When I was in Australia, a friend of mine came and visited me. And she tried to catch a tram
Yes.
to a suburb called Glenelg.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful beach.
Glenelg.
And she's on the tram.
Yeah.
Does this tram go to Glenelg? The tram driver is going, Glenelg, what? He couldn't understand. Another one, she went to a department store trying to buy some Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
And Louis Vuitton. And the person's going, what? And I'm an innocent Aussie. I'd never even heard of Louis Vuitton before. So I'm like, I don't know what the fuck what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know what. And then the storekeeper didn't know. My friend just like ended up crying and leaving the store.
Oh dear.
No one could understand it.
But I think that's an opportunity. It's you start from way off what you're aiming for, and as you learn and have those experiences, you get better and better and better.
No. And I don't just teach kids, I teach seniors as well.
Yeah.
And once they get into the pattern of speaking katakana, it doesn't stop. And it's like for example, R's and V's, right?
Yeah.
Even seniors, you can't correct it once they're in that pattern. So it's better just to cut it from the very beginning.
But I think it's so difficult to cut it out from the very beginning.
No, it's not. It's not. You'll be surprised. Once you actually put a little effort into it, they do get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can talk about this later some other time.
Name of the person and name of the place and the city, we have to be extra careful.
Yeah.
We cannot convey. For example, when I first went to the United States, I said to the taxi driver, Hilton. He didn't understand. And I pronounced several different ways. And through the nose, he could understand. Even bourbon at the bar, they cannot understand. If my pronunciation is correct, bourbon, it doesn't. They don't understand. So for name of the place,
And names of people too.
And name it, for example, Chicago. Chicago.
So only two ways
Washington.
correct
Otherwise.
remember the right pronunciation or make a Japanese pronunciation more popular. Because when I
you
speak
could,
with when I speak Indians, their Indian English also the pronunciation very different.
Yeah.
So my brother also have a problem speaking on the phone.
Yeah.
Because he said Indians pronunciation very different.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like they are speaking English. But once you get how they speak, how they pronounce, then now no problem.
I wonder, like, it might, maybe it's just, as I said, this is not a scientific study. This is based on my experiences. I've never had a problem understanding Japanese people when they use katakana English. But then I also come from London, which is one of the most multicultural cities anywhere in the world. And there's a huge amount of people that are speaking English as a second or other language, sometimes third, fourth, fifth language. So you're used to, every day you hear English, and you hear English from people where it is not their native language. And I think maybe you just learn to adapt your ear to, and maybe that's why I've never had a problem with the understanding of katakana English, and I've never seen it as a big impediment to being able to speak more fluently. Obviously, you want people to pronounce words as close to a native speaker as possible. But I've always felt that it's an overemphasis on pronunciation, and that you can get by if you say bed or head or whatever. But it's interesting to hear different views on that. Have you found when you've travelled abroad that your Japanese pronunciation has been a big problem for you?
Not a big problem, but as he mentioned, sometimes the name of the place, I try to explain. Like actually, last week I went to Germany for business, and at the immigration, the officer asked me, "Where are you going from?" Actually, I lived in Munich airport, and the officer asked me, "Are you business?" I said yes. And where are you going to? So I said Ulm, and I'm afraid of my pronunciation is bad, so I spelled out. ULM, Ulm. So officer said, "Oh, you are going to Ulm. Say Ulm." I said, no, Ulm. Good.
Oh, I see.
So he corrected my pronunciation, and we can go.
So perhaps we can allow Japanese presentation if we really drill students how to spell, for example, and what the alphabet is, so they can say, "I would like to go to the Hilton hotel." Yeah, maybe that would work. Okay. Okay, fine, interesting.
Just one more point. So I think there should be more emphasis on phonics.
On phonics?
Phonics
Yeah.
is really what words are built on.
Yeah.
Like I don't really care so much about grammar. And spelling.
Yeah.
Like, but it's the phonics that should be focused on. I think more like at elementary school or primary school.
Yeah. Teaching to make those sounds in the first place.
Yeah.
That's interesting, which is also strange considering the sort of the kind of rule-based approach to English. When there is a way to learn pronunciation, as it were, it seems strange that those students don't learn phonics.
One of the schools I teach in the junior high school, we teach phonics in the first year of junior high school.
Oh, really?
But I've also heard that some primary schools, you say primary school and
primary school.
Some primary schools, they also teach phonics nowadays as well.
That's a really good point.
Better than learning ABC.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pick up ABC naturally, but our book is more important, I think.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Only phonic work for the young children, not for the adult. Maybe for the adult, some Americans say make a good sentence. Then you will, it's like a puzzle. You can say, maybe he was talking about like this, because they don't use the long word. When you hear the sentence before and after, then probably if something wrong, the sentence doesn't make sense in the story, right? So some people who are experienced with the foreign speakers who speak English, then they can just ask, and if the story or sentence doesn't make sense, then he or she can ask the another question. What do you mean by this?
Okay. Yeah.
Because phonics for the foreigner who are already adult,
Yeah.
very difficult to change.
This is also another thing, which is a very good point you make about phonics, and I'll talk about this later as well. Is that it's great to say we're going to teach phonics in school, but you have to train your teachers so they are able to teach phonics properly. So you
That's
have
where
to.
we come in, man.
Yeah. So I have to learn phonics first.
Press play.
Yeah.
I'm
So.
sure that today the students in the elementary school learn Romaji.
Yeah.
Still learn. It is very harmful for them to learn
I
English.
think so.
So because we use A is a we learn.
Yeah.
So that is but totally different in English. We all has all sounds. So the warm and warm.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Wonder and wander is
Yes,
my
walk
least favorite.
walk.
Yeah.
Students totally misunderstand to pronounce the A sound, A spell in English.
Yeah.
They also say warm.
Warm. And many words, many pronunciation may be similar, but it does not correct meaning. For example, some person, Japanese, some government person was angry with Ringan. Some person said, I don't know Ringan, I am a Ringan. So it does not correct pronunciation from the word. So pronunciation so very difficult.
Yeah, pronunciation is very difficult. I don't know. I've always wanted my students to be speaking, however badly. So I've always tried to encourage them to speak, even if they're going to speak katakana, and then try to get rid of it, get them to reduce it over time. And in fact, the English-speaking club that I look after, obviously they are motivated students, but over time, just talking to them, their use of katakana-style English has reduced. But I think they've also made an effort to reduce their katakana Japanese-style pronunciation. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it works for
I just got to say one more point. Like, I'm really sorry. When I mean I've banned katakana, I mean like before, like if there's a word that students can understand, they'd write in katakana above it, like, you know.
Oh, I see.
The English word, then they write katakana. So they get it imprinted on their mind. This is how to pronounce this word, but actually the real pronunciation and the Japanese pronunciation is different.
Yeah.
So I don't like them doing that. Of course, when they speak, they do, as you say, they do speak with that katakana.
Oh, that's what I'm
accent.
talking about.
Okay, the accent in the Japanese accent. I do try and fix it as much as possible.
Yeah.
But as you say, and quite rightly, it is important for them to speak and communicate in the class time.
Yeah.
But as far as writing in katakana, there is no more katakana.
Oh no, I don't allow
they
that.
will take notes and stuff in katakana. Like no.
Oh no. I'm thankfully I've never had that.
Yeah.
That's
and as for the Japanese accent, no. I mean that's fair enough. You can't- And I try and fix it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Especially B and R and stuff like that. But
yeah.
As you quite rightly say, it's much better they just go for it and speak.
Yeah. Oh, so sorry. Maybe I should make this a little more clear. When I talk about katakana, what I mean from that point on is students saying bedo when they're speaking. So using the katakana sounds to make English words when they're speaking.
If they're talking to each other, it's fine. If they're giving a presentation, I would say just cut it out. Like, and salada, I'm sick of hearing salada.
Salada, yeah.
No, there's no salad in my class. There's only salad.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, wait, go on. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's a very good point. Okay, so to clarify, I'm not talking about them writing in katakana instead of English. I'm talking about them using the katakana sounds to make English words. Generally speaking, I'm happy for them to do that as long as it means they are speaking. We knew katakana would provoke so many questions.
When I taught some English to elementary school students, I also wanted to, not using katakana beside the English words.
Yeah.
But one of my partners said, she said, if you don't put the katakana below the English words, how can children learn after school? When they go back home, how can they remember what the students sound like if they don't have an English tape recorder or a CD player? how can they review the English words without helping from Kuwashi English pronunciation?
Put katakana in that way. Put to solve the problem. Put katakana as close to as real pronunciation. For example, not Washington, Washington. Very close, closely. Copying what they
But it's
pronounce.
difficult for the student, for the
Oh.
small student.
Maybe
Yeah.
worst, maybe that's a problem, but now technology can solve.
Well, that's
when you
very
type,
good, very
then
good.
maybe the internet or something, maybe you can find a website that says Washington.
Yeah,
This is-
now
I'm going to talk about this.
Or dictionary with a sound.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, actually. So remind me when I talk about technology in schools as one of the ideas towards the end. Remind me about the katakana thing, because we'll talk about that again. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. Myth number 4. Japanese students are too shy to speak English. I hear this all the time. Japanese students are too shy to speak English. Okay. Have you ever seen a Japanese student outside the classroom? They are not shy at all. Not shy at all. And when I say shy, I'm not talking about sort of cultural things. So, you know, the sort of the wa and not being seen to be sort of speaking out, etc. I'll cover those later. I do think that is one of the reasons why Japanese students struggle, the sort of the classroom mentality. But I'm talking here about like a basic human characteristic. People say Japanese students, Japanese people are too shy to speak English. I don't think Japanese students are any more shy or any less shy than students in any other country in the world. There are certain customs in the classroom which I think hold students back from really experimenting with English and practicing English. But I don't think Japanese people or Japanese students are naturally any more or less shy than anyone else in the world. And certainly if you walk down the corridor, they're so happy to speak English to me. They say, "Hi, good morning, how are you? I'm fine, thank you." You know, they're very eager to come forward and practice their English. The classroom setting is a little different. So experience may vary. Obviously, in any society, there are shy students and there are not shy students. You know, that happens in any society. But my experience has been that Japanese students are not any more or less shy than anyone else, as a personality trait. If you look, as I say, outside the classroom, they're very genki, they're very cheerful, they're very friendly. They'll talk to me in English. They'll shout things to me in English. They'll fight with their friends. They'll do all these things. My interactions in Japanese with students when I have them is just like having an interaction with any other person. I think it's important, and I'll talk about this later. It's important to create a safe environment for students. An environment where they're not afraid to make mistakes, and that can be difficult.
That's what I want to advocate. Yes, because I think you said outside of the school, maybe they are so genki. Like I have a kid, and she is the same can be said for her. During the classroom, maybe they are afraid of making a mistakes, especially as you mentioned, like 過去完了進行形 was like many grammars we have to learn, and maybe students try to speak English perfectly. Actually, in my age, we don't have any native speaker around my class, and just learning the grammar, and sometimes listening class, but no chance to speak in English. So that's why they can learn or write, but can't speak because they know many words, English words, but just afraid of making a mistake or
exactly. But as I say, I don't think that they are naturally they are any more shy or otherwise than British students, Australian students, French students, German students, African students, anywhere. I think you will get the same mix anywhere, but there are certain other factors, other things to consider, which is why this myth slide has a big but at the bottom. Okay, so at the bottom it says but. Okay, so I think I'd like to talk about this one combined with the next one, if that's okay. So Japanese students are too shy to speak English. That's, I think, a myth. But if you would, Matsura-san, if you would do the next one. So I've called this SCF, Serious Contributory Factors, which means big reasons why, basically. Big reasons why Japanese students struggle. Some of the main things I feel are holding Japanese students back from speaking English. Okay. So Matsura-san, if you could go to the next one, please. Okay. So this is the but. Yeah? I don't think Japanese students are naturally shy, but the classroom. Okay. So the first thing is, I don't think there is a volunteer culture in the classroom. Students, even if they know the answer, even very simple questions, will not volunteer an answer. If I say hands up A and then hands up B, maybe 3 out of 20 students will put their hands up. And then when they see no one else put their hand up, they'll put it down again, straight away. So there is a culture in the classroom that it's not good to volunteer. There's the fear, I suppose, of losing face by giving a wrong answer. In terms of how I would give credit to a student, number 1 is a student who gives the right answer. Number 2 is a student who gives the wrong answer. And number 3 is a student who doesn't give an answer at all. I would happily have a student who answers every class 1 question and gets it wrong. That would be brilliant. I would love my students to answer when I ask them questions, even if they answer wrong. But I think the fear of losing face in the classroom is quite big, and it's difficult for students to feel comfortable speaking English. But because we're speaking English, this is the one opportunity that we have in school, because we're learning about a different culture and learning about a different language. It's really the one opportunity where you can say to the students, okay, you don't have to follow Japanese customs in this class. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to take risks. But that can be quite difficult, especially when there is the view by some students that English is not cool. English is really difficult. English is really tough. The way that English is taught, with an emphasis on grammar, and an emphasis on sort of cracking a code and treating everything so very thorough, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. It's not easy for the less smart students. It's not easy for the less smart students. And all around the world, I think this is true. No one likes the smart kids. Huh? No one likes them. Yeah? It's the kids that don't do well on the tests and that mess around in their class. They're the cool kids. Yeah? So being good at English is not really cool in the classroom. It's cool to say wakara. It's cool to say I don't understand. It's cool to say, oh, this is all foreign. I don't understand anything. It's all too difficult. There is an English is difficult mentality. And that comes from the students, sometimes, not always. It also comes from the teachers. Often the teachers will say, I appreciate, oh, it's so difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult. We've got all this grammar to do. We've got to do this. I know it's difficult, but we've got to do it. I know it's difficult. We've got to move on to the next thing. I know it's difficult, but I think there's an opportunity to, in the classroom, convince the students that English, basic speaking English, is not that difficult. You know, in terms of world languages, if you look at studies as to how difficult languages are, Japanese is right up there. It's really difficult. Polish is very difficult. Chinese is very difficult. English comes pretty low down on the list. Really? Yeah, sorry. But like English is generally considered by most academics to be one of the easier languages to learn. The pronunciation makes it difficult. And the complexity of the words makes it difficult. But the basic grammar points are quite simple.
To you.
To me, and to independent academics. But they look at the average time that it takes a non-native speaker to learn a language, and English is one of the quicker languages for people to learn. Japanese is one of the more difficult languages for people to learn. So I'm not sure the English is so difficult mentality is too helpful for students. I think we should encourage students to think, let's get the basics right. There are things we can do. There's two more practical points about the classroom. One of them is discipline. There's a lot of students who are allowed to get away with doing no work as long as they don't disrupt the class. They can get away with not doing very much at all. Generally speaking, the discipline for students who are distracting other students or are talking or are misbehaving, generally speaking, that's stopped in the classroom. But there seems to be a tolerance of either doing really, really bad work or not doing any work at all. And that's one of the things that is, I suppose, is a difference in my experiences at school compared to experiences here. That there's an expectation back home that if you don't study and if you don't do some work, your teacher will ask questions and say, you sat here for half an hour, you've written one word and you spelt it wrong. What were you doing? So I think that's another thing. I think that you can create, if you're not careful, an environment where some students get left behind in a class. And I think that sort of participation should be encouraged and rewarded. Participation should be rewarded. Even students that make an effort and perhaps don't do so well, I think that should be rewarded. It's difficult senior high school because we can't give them sweets and candy and stuff. At junior high school, you just give them sweets and stickers. No, really?
Stickers, yes.
Yeah.
Candy, no.
Really? I see.
It's been banned by the government.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's a smart move.
Maybe.
And I think another thing linking into that actually is juku. All these students that come to my school, they're so tired because they go to juku every night. And they relearn what they should have learned in school at juku. So a lot of them that come to school, they just go through the motions at school. They turn up, they sit in the classroom, they don't do anything, and they know that they're going to go to juku later. And they're going to sit in a smaller group at juku, and they're going to have everything explained to them, and they're going to write it down. So juku is difficult. It makes the students sleepy, and it basically gives them a second chance if they didn't pay attention the first time round. And they know they have to go to juku anyway. So why bother listening in school when you can just listen later in juku? You have to go anyway. Let's go and listen in juku. So I find that can be difficult. How does that relate into students not speaking? I think all of that is about participation. And speaking and participation are very linked. We need students who are talking to one another, who are answering questions in class, who are not afraid to make mistakes. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the classroom, and perhaps especially some of those cultural differences about sort of losing face and showing off. I'd be interested to hear if you have any thoughts on that.
And I think that one of the mentalities of Japanese, many Japanese people are perfectionists. They want to be perfect when they make sentences, when they speak out. So it's a very important aspect of this problem. And how we can solve this problem to break the perfectionism of Japanese mentality.
Yeah, that's I don't have an answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Just raising this question.
It's a very interesting point. Very interesting.
You mentioned about Japanese not being shy, but compare with South American Japanese.
I don't think so. I genuinely don't believe Japanese people are, by nature, as in their personality, I don't believe they are any more shy.
But from my experience, there is so many foreign students learning English, right?
Yeah.
Many South American,
Yeah.
their English is so bad, their grammar is so bad,
Yeah.
but they always say something. They
Yeah.
always want to say something. But Japanese, even they want to say something, but if they know their English is not good, their grammar not sure, they don't say it.
But this connects very nicely to what you said about perfectionism. I don't think that's so much a character trait. It's a cultural thing, surely. It's a cultural sort of expectation that, you know, perfection is valued, and if you can't say it perfectly, don't say it. I don't think that's necessarily an aspect of their personality. Like, what I mean to say is, if you take Japanese students and put them in an environment where they're comfortable, so they're speaking Japanese to each other, they're talking about the weekend, etc., what they do. When the Japanese students are in a comfortable environment, they're not shy at all. It's just the South American students find that environment in the classroom pretty comfortable. They're not bothered by making mistakes. So they find that comfortable.
If you read book Sword and Chrysanthemum.
Stolen Chrysanthemum?
Sword and Chrysanthemum by Ruth Benedict.
Yeah.
And Bushido,
yeah.
Itobe-Nazo,
yeah.
you can understand the losing face.
Yeah.
Haji o kaku, the worst thing in the world.
Worst thing in the
For
world.
the Japanese, yes.
Yeah.
They can't be capable.
So how do we create an environment in the English classroom where losing face is okay? Can we do that? Is it possible?
Maybe go to a bath.
Well, we have a group of English in the onsen.
Onsen, co-ed.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, I'm not sure that would work.
We'd get in a lot of trouble, I think.
Yeah, I think we would. Yeah, rightly so as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you make really good points. There's definitely a perfectionist attitude. But so to clarify, when I say Japanese students are not any more shy, I think if you put a Japanese student in a comfortable situation, they're not shy. But what is comfortable for a Japanese person and what is comfortable for a South American person might be different. So maybe they appear shy in the classroom because that's an uncomfortable situation, but at an onsen, it's not uncomfortable. Whereas a South American person may feel uncomfortable at an onsen.
Precisely, it's not being shy or not shy, but South Americans, they are culturally, they don't feel that what Japanese think being bad or being wrong.
Yeah.
They don't think that is wrong or that is ridiculous or
Yeah.
it's not time to say or do or
Yeah.
It's culturally they don't think that way.
No, it's true.
So
yeah. Oh, it's interesting. It's interesting. So
I see their culture more like que sera sera.
Yeah. Oh, we guys, yeah, whatever happens. Yeah.
And we believe in accuracy.
Yes.
In the classroom.
Yes.
In students answering the teacher's question.
Yeah.
They don't ask questions to us.
Yeah.
So I'm always advocating, students ask questions to each other or to the teachers.
Yeah.
I call it ability to ask questions.
Ah.
They ask me a question.
Yeah.
I give them some credit.
That's yes.
Some bonus points.
Yes.
In my class.
That's good.
Yeah.
I welcome that approach.
Oh, yeah.
I think questions should be rewarded. Any participation should be rewarded.
Ken Robinson.
Ken Robinson.
Ken Robinson on YouTube.
I
You
do
should
not.
see that.
Ken Robinson.
Yes, he is a psychologist.
Yeah.
For school atmosphere.
Yeah.
The modern school system is killing the motivation.
Yeah.
Globally, even in Britain, he's a British academician naturalized in Los Angeles. And he often appears on TED conference.
Oh, I know the TED conferences.
So today,
yeah.
go home and
Ken Robinson.
Ken Robinson.
Okay.
Very, very humorous.
Mm.
And he says, modern school system is killing the motivation of students globally. Because our curriculum is too strict, imposed upon the students' brain, and students are more creative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Naturally,
Yes.
inborn
Yes.
creativity.
Yes.
That's naturally,
Yes.
overkill.
And this is another thing in the classroom. You have to give the students opportunities, not just in speaking, but also in writing, and choosing their materials to a certain extent, their own
That's right.
materials to be creative. They need the opportunity to. They are naturally creative, so they need the opportunity to be creative and follow things that are interesting to them.
So Rod Ellis, of Auckland University in New Zealand.
Yeah.
He is promoting what they call task-based approach.
Right.
They don't ask students to create any answers or.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they, in his theory, there is a real learning in activities.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Classroom activities.
Yeah.
So, 活動の中に学習がある。There is real learning taking place in students' activities, initiative.
Yeah. Well, in some countries in northern Europe, so in Scandinavia, they don't have any tests.
No.
It's this same approach. It's learning through doing and learning useful skills and learning how to learn for yourself, for example.
So Katayama sensei, you went to Taiwan, and in their class, students are, communicating very freely, complete freedom of speech, with Chinese counterparts. For 50 minutes, I was so impressed.
Yeah, amazing.
Free speaking, Hibizaki Elementary School.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And we have the opportunity to do this sort of thing in Japan. It wouldn't be too difficult to replicate this.
So task is to be, tackled by the students, not answering them. Yeah. So we have to define what is a task in the class.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can do it.
Students should have more opportunities to speak out
Yes.
what they learned in classroom.
Yes. Yes.
No chances to speak
いいですよ、
out
でも。
outside the class. Once they go out of the classroom,
Yeah.
they have no chances to speak English.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the one opportunity that they have. And particularly the classes where they have a native speaker. That's a really good opportunity which should be used to make sure they have access to some real listening, for example, some real communication. And it's the one chance they have to forget some of the things about losing face, or to try to, when you're speaking with a foreigner, because the foreigners don't care about losing face or like, if you make mistakes or anything. I mean, you should go to Hiroshima on a Friday night. The foreigners don't care about anything, So I do think it's an opportunity for them to maybe let their guard down a little and practice, and feel free to make some
Very
mistakes.
small kids are okay to make mistakes in class, even in classroom.
Yeah.
But as they get older, they are afraid. They are afraid to become afraid to make mistakes before in front of other students.
Is it because each Japanese person are very judgmental to others for the accuracy? So Japanese people are very famous to be accurate about time. So Japanese railway.
Not my girlfriend.
I'm always late for delay.
That's no problem. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for interesting. I want to listen until the end, but
Yeah, sorry, I'm going on forever.
no, I have to pick up my daughter. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
so sorry. ありがとうございます。すみません。
And without Japanese, speak such a English or another language not so difficult because of most difficult for Japanese is no such a accent stress. Neighboring country China and Korea, they have accent.
Tonal.
Yeah,
tonal,
four accent.
Yeah.
And
Vietnamese
in
has
China, in Korea, Gekyo no stress and no stress. It's so difficult for us. But for them, English is not so difficult. They have, including such a stress. Yes. So to learn English is not so difficult. Japanese very clever.
They are very smart and very hardworking as well.
Exactly.
Clever, hardworking. Most of them go to two schools. They go to normal school and Juku.
But for learning English, please forgive me, forgive us.
No, it's fine. I forgive everyone.
It used many times.
It does take a lot of time.
This is not about learning English, but Japanese being more positive and express themselves, or also it means that you are making Japanese culture change.
Yeah, sorry.
Because that's kind of part of the Japanese culture.
Of course, yeah, and I understand we have to respect the local culture and use the elements of it that we can to help.
Korea, I think if the Korea hates Japanese, Korean culture is very close to the Japanese culture compared with other cultures. But Koreans, many speak English because how they learn English is different. Because for people who can afford to study abroad, sometimes the wife and their children live in the United States, Canada, or Australia. If they cannot afford, sometimes they move to the Philippines to learn English.
Yes.
But in Japan, in order to learn English, doing such thing is not accepted, or many people don't think that it's worth doing that.
It's true. Okay.
So.
Matsuru-san, could we go on to the next one, please?
Okay.
Okay. So this is one of the things I think is a big factor. There is an absence of materials and influence. And what I mean by that is that most movies that come to Japan, for one thing, they come 6 to 12 months after they're released in the West. They're often released with a Japanese soundtrack over the top. There is a really successful Japanese movie industry, so they make up a very small percentage of all of the movies here, for example. The same for music. You have J-pop, K-pop, very successful domestic, very successful Japanese music industry. So the Western influences, the influence of English into music and movies is quite small. The same is for reading materials. You have lots of a very well-established magazine and newspaper industry in Japan with lots of Japanese language articles, lots of Japanese language books, lots of Japanese authors. So the opportunities to pick up Western literature, Western books without really looking for it are not there to the same extent. The news in Japan is also quite Japan focused. To give you a recent example, I was watching NHK when the Sydney siege was happening, the hostages in Sydney, the gunman in the chocolate shop, and it was on the national NHK news. To give you a comparison, in the West, in Europe, every news channel would be running this news story on loop, constantly. Breaking news, what's happening. It would be the main news in the evening for maybe 25 minutes, half an hour, they would talk about it, video reports, etc. In Japan, they talked about it for about 30 seconds, and then played a 10-minute long video documentary about snack bars in Tokyo. And so in the West, they get this news about some major event that's happening, and it will run for hours and hours and hours, and everyone is talking about it. People are online talking about it. And in Japan, it got 30 seconds, and then they talked about snack bars in Tokyo on the national news. So I find that the news in Japan is very Japan focused. There's not a lot of news about what's happening in other parts of the world. It's very focused in Japan. Whereas I don't know about in Australia, but certainly in the UK, at least half the news is about what is happening in different countries, I would say.
And just to kind of flip that a bit, when there was the Fukushima disaster, right? That would get top news in Australia. It would be the first story.
Yeah.
And
in the UK as well, breaking news, rolling.
And it that's what I'm saying. Like in Japan, the mention of what was happening in Sydney wasn't even a top story. But I mean, of course, on on the scale, of course, Fukushima is very, very bad. What happened in Sydney is bad, of course, but I mean, thousands of people didn't die and homeless and whatnot. But relatively speaking, they're on a similar level. They're both international events, right? They're both very important events, especially for that period of time, for that day. So in Australia, there would have been, I mean, my parents told me, I was living in Japan at the time, but my parents told me, you know, it's front, first story news, you know, they're doing updates.
Yeah.
Like he was explaining what happened in Sydney and how it was reported in Europe. But then again, to flip it, in Japan, there was very little news about what was happening in Australia. So I didn't even know what was happening until I saw some international news. We've got BBC at home. I saw it on BBC. I'm like, what on earth is going on?
Yeah.
I didn't, and then I saw it in Japanese news, but it was very short, and it wasn't even the first story. So.
But as long as you stick to the traditional media, it might be true. But as you said, the progress of technology,
yes,
you
exactly.
can catch up that
which is
kind
fine.
of international
That's
news
a good
by
point.
the internet.
But in most
Very
households, in most houses, people aren't even watching NHK news. They're watching TBS or some other news. And this is commercial news, and it's really made to keep Japanese people ignorant.
Ignorant.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. That's why we have so much J-pop as well. It's not. It's just to keep people a little more. They don't question things, and as long as the media doesn't make strong reports, people don't have so much knowledge, and so they don't question things so much.
And this really feeds into the motivation side. Because if you've got students in a class that never hear about what's happening in Australia, America, or other parts of the world, why would they care about learning English? They've got nothing to relate that to. If all the information they receive and all the things they hear is all Japanese, and it's all accessible in Japanese, why would they ever learn English? And I think that's a connection. So I think this is quite a big factor.
Western visitor a lot in Japan. Visitor from Western country, so a lot of visitor from Western country. So they should have their family. They should know their family in faraway countries. Yes. So such a NHK reporter should learn English more. And maybe they cannot speak English, so they don't understand such a situation. So become our situation. But English, yes. Why do you learn English? They don't speak English. It may be true.
And they never hear English or about other English-speaking countries. And also, I'm not saying, by any stretch, I'm not saying that they should, that there's any reason why they should. What I'm saying is that if you want Japanese students, if your goal is for Japanese students to speak English, be motivated in English, and enjoy English, then you have to encourage the media to produce more stories about stuff happening in English-speaking countries, stuff outside of Japan, movies, music, things, you know, English language influences are important, I think. And you've made some comparisons to Korea. I've been to Korea once. One of the things I noticed about Seoul is that there seems to be a real love of Western culture in Seoul, in Korea. There seems to be a real love of sort of Western brands and sort of Western TV, and English is quite cool, was the impression I got in Korea. Like it seemed that English is quite cool. Knowing English means that you're sort of up with the latest trends and the movies and the music and stuff like that, despite the fact they have a successful K-pop and
Seoul, there is many young people, they study abroad. And also when they, as I said, some of the wealthy kids, when they come back to Korea, they can exercise their power. If they think, oh, this is cool, they can adapt. But in Japan, no.
Oh, I see. Okay, fine. So I can't speak for wealthy or otherwise, but it was an observation when I spent time in Korea that there just seemed to be a general, you see Western stuff everywhere, English everywhere, you hear people speaking English around the place.
And also, the other way is Korean Americans. And they are still interconnecting with Korean. But the Japanese Americans and Japanese, there's not much relationship.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting comparison, I think, between the two countries.
So they cannot exchange the culture.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts about sort of the media and these sorts of things?
So media is also contributing to making us Japanese citizens Galapagos type of people. We know. The Darwin, you know.
I know. Unfortunately,
my students often say.
I spent all my my Galapagos money in the bar, so I never got to go. But yeah, I know the Galapagos sort of this sort of island of.
That's right. So much so inward looking.
Yeah.
That us Japanese always stay thinking within Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Introvert.
Oh, introvert. Yeah.
But that's okay. Japan has a very strong, extremely interesting, polite, kind, very strong culture of itself.
Yeah.
But if there is a genuine aim for people to speak English, then you can't have this sort of enclosed culture. You have to allow other influences to come in. If that is your goal.
Yeah.
If the Japanese government decided we don't care about English, we want to protect our own culture, that's fine. That's okay. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Obviously, I'm an English teacher, so I like the fact that I have a job here. But if the government said we don't care about English at all, we're just going to focus on Japanese, that's okay as well. But they've said they want people to be able to speak English. And in order to do that, you need to open up to Western media and more international stories and more English language materials.
So we need a kind of evolution in this culture.
Yeah.
By borrowing some ideas through English, not Japanese translation.
Yeah.
So that's the point.
Yeah.
So Japanese government has noticed that's defect in our educational system. And trying to change, improve.
Things like the English village, for
That's
example.
right.
That's a good example.
But I feel that there is a double standard about English education.
Yeah.
Because Japan's government, they want the Japanese to learn English so they can communicate to make money to sell the product. But they are not expecting or they are not hoping that the Japanese to have a more Western mind.
Yeah. Yeah, we say they want to have their cake and eat it. Eh?
Yeah.
You want to have your cake and eat it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So you make the money from being able to export and import it, but also protect the Japanese culture.
Because being influenced by the Western cultures, then they start losing a part of the Japanese culture.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then if say, okay, people with all the Japanese and me, same, friends. Then if you said you are teachers, but if you don't have leadership, then just being a teacher, students will not listen to you. But in Japan, if you said you are teachers, not 100%, but supposed to listen to you.
They are supposed to. They are
And
supposed
also
to.
the company is saying, just because you are older and you are newcomers, maybe you have to listen to the old people. But if everything equal, it's up to your experience and the abilities, something. Then what in the past maybe not doesn't exist. So people who have a power or who enjoy that system doesn't like to doesn't like any change.
Yeah.
So they are saying like maybe English important, but they don't want to lose that kind of old part of the Japanese culture.
That's very interesting.
And whenever I spoke with government official, they always refuse. And when I work for the ship inspectors, and I spoke many PST, Port State Control, and they have a right and powers to check foreign registered vessels who are coming to Japan to ensure that they comply with international conventions. And there is a port, Kasaoka Port in Okayama. They don't comply with international convention. So I said, Kasaoka Port does not comply with international conventions. Why? And they said national regulation is a higher priority than international convention. I said, common sense doesn't make sense. So I contacted with the U.S. Coast Guard.
is the Japan office because one of their object for the Japan office is making sure that Asian countries comply with international conventions. So I said Japan does not comply with international convention. This is we did not hear that kind of explanation from the Japan government. They call to the army base in the Tachikawa, and this is what they hear from in English and what I told them. It's different. So this can be wrong. This can be happening.
So there's a difference between the global objective and the national objective.
Yeah, because usually in my understanding, international convention is higher than the domestic, or national regulation. Then I send my question to the Ministry of the Land, Infrastructures and Transport, and they answer me in Japanese. And so I said I want to discuss with other English speakers. So please write me in English. They took 3 months to answer in English. Then I contact with IMO, International Marine Organization, that Japan does not comply with international convention. This is if Japan government does not want to comply with international regulation, it's fine. We give the autonomy to comply with international regulation or not. Then to me like, oh, I did not know that until 1 year ago.
Yeah, so this difference between like domestic priorities and like this global priority of getting people to speak.
Because that international convention said there is one sentence that they give the powers to countries to not to comply.
Yeah.
So, okay, that sentence works. So.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, it seems to be a little bit off the track. Let's go back to the translation's harmless. How harmful it is, the translation. The Education Ministry always requires or suggests to teach English only in English. So it is not kept in schools of Japan now at all. So that's the problem.
I will get to that. You have touched on my big point. Okay, you've touched on my big point. So I tell you what. Let's move to. Can we move to the next one, please, Matsuda-san? Okay. So this is just a quick slide about approach to English. Okay, approach to English means the way we look at English study in Japan. So I think one of the big problems is that it's the way that English is approached. It's treated like maths or any other subject. That there's a code that you can crack by learning grammar rules. That if you press all these buttons, I understand, then press enter, perfect English comes out because you know all the rules. Yeah? Know all the rules, learn all the exceptions, then you can speak English. And I think connected to that, I've called this learning for the sake of learning. Because most students, when they leave school, will not use English at all, speaking, probably reading, writing. Lots of them won't go abroad to different countries. And if they do, they'll wait till they're retired when they're finally able to take some Nenkyu, and they'll go with HIS and go with a load of Japanese speakers. They're kind of learning English just for the sake of learning it, just for the purpose of cracking the code. No? The reason that they're learning English is because it's something to learn and it's a skill you can mark as right or wrong. And the universities want to know you can do it or you can't do it. I'll come to that in a second. So because there's this approach that you have to treat it like a code, you can't crack a code unless you have all of the pieces of information. You have to know everything to crack a code. Yeah? In order to crack a code, you need to know how this works, this works, this works, this works, this works, this works, this works. So instead of choosing the important bits to be able to speak English and to be able to have simple conversations, they learn everything. Kakokano Yoshinkoke. I know I keep coming back to that. But they learn everything. Absolutely everything. And this means there's not that much time to do creative things. The syllabus goes like this. They don't get the opportunity to go over stuff again. And one of the things which I find kind of strange is that, yes, there is this sort of code cracking approach. And the way that grammar is approached, I believe sort of 40, 50 years ago, when they studied, when people of a certain generation studied grammar, for example, you would learn a rule and then you would practice it 100 times. And there were 100 different examples. So you would know it. You'd really, really know it. And you'd go through the grammar and you'd do this example and then you'd learn it 100 times, do the examples, learn all the exceptions. And at the end of your schooling, you could probably write a reasonable letter in English or read an article in English or something. But now the emphasis seems to be on, rather than learning the actual rules, it's gone a step further. Now it's learning phrases. So it's not just learning the rule, it's learning a phrase. So if you say, I like swimming at weekends, a Japanese student can reproduce that. I like swimming at weekends. If you change swimming to playing golf, the rule doesn't twig in their head. So they don't realize they can substitute swimming with playing golf and it still makes sense. They have to have heard the phrase before, I like playing golf at weekends. Which is why most Japanese students only ever use the adjectives interesting or fun. Everything is fun and interesting. Everything is fun and interesting. The family funeral was fun and interesting. Literally, everything is fun or interesting. What did they do on holiday? I went to the sea, I looked at a beautiful view. Because it's safe, it's been, they've seen that before. So I think by encouraging speaking and encouraging sort of being more creative, they'll actually find cracking the code is a lot easier because they'll start to learn rules. And they'll start to learn rules. So a rules-based approach is a good way. If you want to master it like a code and be able to write a good letter, then you can learn those rules through practicing and through speaking and through doing examples. So I think speaking is a creative, it's a practical purpose. So that when I say about limited creative output, a lot of it is repeating phrases that have been used before, have been seen before in a textbook. There's not a great deal of fact-finding and finding out new words for yourself. It's staggering, actually. Most of my colleagues, my Japanese teachers, can tell me in advance if a student won't know a word or they'll know it, because it will have been on one of the textbook lists or not. And they have an amazing capacity to remember all the words that they've learned at junior high school, first year of senior high school. And most of the students, I would say 95% of the words they know are the same. It's rare to find a student who knows words from outside of that list, unless they've got some other reason to be learning English or some other interest outside of school or something. Most of them know the same words. So time spent looking up new words and being able to find out how to fit those into the language is quite rare. So we get on to sort of for what purpose. And this is the big question, I suppose. It's for what purpose? Why are they learning English? Why are they learning English at all? And I think if it's okay, I'd like to move on to the next one. And then we'll do some more questions at the end. So this is the big reason. Why are they learning English? The big reason why all the students are learning English. Very topical this weekend. I think that says Daigaku something. Sentashken. Okay? Yeah. Dai something. Sentashken. This is why all Japanese students are studying English. The only reason that Japanese students are studying English, I think. The only thing that schools care about, and the only thing that students care about. I ask the question, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they care about this? It's the most important thing that students will ever do in their whole life in Japan. So for every half an hour spent learning, doing a speaking exercise or something creating, it's half an hour you could have spent doing something that will be on the Sentashken. And this is, I think, the one big reason Japanese students can't speak English, the Sentashken. I really do think this is the main reason they can't speak English. Because the entire reason for learning basically from elementary school, right through junior high school and then senior high school, all leads up to this weekend. And they do their English test. And there's no speaking test at all. There's no speaking of any kind. So everything leads up to this Sintashken. So there's a sense that speaking is not important. And why would speaking be important if the big goal at the end of it is the Sintashken? If I had kids in Japanese education system and they were taking the Sintashken, I would want them to be studying for the Sintashken. And the general view is that speaking doesn't help with the Sintashken. Spending time speaking and learning English and creative English doesn't help with the Sintashken. I think it does, personally. I think any understanding of the language will help you take the Sintashken. But I can understand why there's such an emphasis on not speaking and doing these, going through these steps and learning Kakokano Shinkoken. Because Kakokano Shinkoken is in the Sintashken.
Oh yeah?
It's in the Sintashken. That's why it's learned. Everything that is learned in schools in Japan is learned for a reason, and that reason for English, at least, is called the Sintashken. Matsura-san, could we go on to the next slide? How's it changing overnight? Okay, this is my ideal world suggestion. Change university entrance requirements. Either the government does it or the universities themselves, and require an English speaking test. The moment that the universities say there is a speaking test for the Sintashken, every school will change their curriculum. Every school, they'll bring in consultants and there'll be workshops, and we've got to do this speaking thing. It's the new speaking thing. The new speaking thing. Boot camp, exactly. The universities say we'll have a speaking test for English, and then the schools will listen. Because if the government says we need students who are able to speak English, and the universities say we don't care about speaking English, the schools will listen to the universities. Because this is all they care about, the Sintashken. This is just my view anyway. So I think that some efforts have to be made to change the way that universities, choose students. So that can be either an Aiken style test, step test, something like that, or a university's own tests would be a really good way of doing it. And if you do it so that the best university, I was talking to a colleague about this, and she said, well, the students will just choose the university where they don't have to do the speaking test. And maybe initially that's true. But what you do is you start with the best universities that people want to go to anyway. So if Tokyo Daigaku and Kyoto Daigaku get together and say, we now have a speaking test, which they could easily do, the motivated students are still going to apply to those universities because they're still the best two universities. And then what happens is universities 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on the list say, we want to be like Tokyo Daigaku. We want to be like Kyoto Daigaku. We're going to have a speaking test too. And then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they say, well, we want to be like those guys as well. So we'll have a speaking test as well. And before you know it, all the universities now have an English speaking test, which means all the schools have to teach some form of teaching. In fact, there was some stuff in the newspaper quite recently. Tokyo and Kyoto Daigaku were talking about having some classes in English, bringing students so students can go there and study in English. I think as part of an effort, for one thing, to encourage international students to come to Japan and study. Because if you look at the number of international students in Japan compared to other universities in Asia and the rest of the world, not many students come to Japan to study. Even though they've got fantastic universities, there's not that many international students because there's very few courses that are offered in English.
They created a special budget to establish as many as 10 elite global super global universities. 10, about 10.
About 10, yeah.
Yeah, top 10.
Yeah.
And under that, below that, we have another mediocre global universities. And we are still out of that. Hiroshima University, Okayama, some other universities are second class, super global universities. But among the high school, super global high school is Jogakuen High School in Hiroshima Prefecture.
Yes. Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah.
They have probably more than 10 million yen
Really?
each year.
Yeah.
Special budget.
For English education, for English learning.
Yeah. From government.
Yeah.
Even though Jogakuen is a private school, high school, they have special programs in Asia, in Europe, in America.
Yeah, they just go to Canada for their school trip, I think. Yeah. So this is the idea, is that if you bring in an English speaking test for the universities, the schools will have to teach it, and they'll have to put a focus on it. And initially, it doesn't even have to be an English speaking test. You could get the universities in the short term to actually prepare an English sort of test which actually challenges understanding rather than memory. So you have the students write something creative. You have the students answer questions that maybe they haven't seen before. And you encourage the teaching of creative English where mistakes are okay, and you reward people for being adventurous. But this is the ideal world. I was thinking this is, if you bring in a speaking test, the schools will have to introduce some sort of speaking in schools, a significant speaking component, because otherwise they'll be left behind when it comes to the Setashken.
But that is strong another reason. There are strong another reasons. Because of English is worldwide language.
Yeah.
So if they cannot speak Japanese between two persons, between two persons, they can speak English. For example, Japanese is too difficult for them. English is very good. And for myself, if I cannot speak Korean or Chinese, English.
Exactly.
Yes, English is a bridge.
Exactly.
So
it's the world's second language.
Yeah.
If you go anywhere and you meet someone, if you go on holiday to Hungary, you can't be expected to speak Hungarian. But you can speak English. If you can speak English, Hungarian people can generally speak some English as well. So you have a common language. And it's not saying that English is better than Japanese or anything like that. It's just about having a common language with other people. Because you can't realistically expect to learn another language before you go on holiday there. It would be crazy to spend 5 years learning Swedish before you go to Sweden for 1 week. So it's an important global language.
Then I'd like to say them. If they speak English is so difficult, please learn Japanese. Because of Japanese is a bridge, America and China. China don't, they would like to speak English because of they are Chinese. American diplomat, they wouldn't like to speak Chinese because of they American. So that is good to Japanese.
So speak Japanese.
So Japanese is a bridge. So then I'd like to say, if them, for them, English is difficult, please learn Japanese.
Okay.
Okay.
I think not all Japanese have to learn English, but for the Japanese who want to learn English, they have to give the good English education, because
yes, it's the next slide.
Go ahead.
Well, could we go to the next one, and then we'll do a Q&A? Yes, very good. Okay, so these are some more ideas. Okay, the big idea is to change the university approach. But you said English as an optional subject. So that's what you said. There is a strong argument for recognizing that there are lots of people in Japan that will never use English after school and don't have any interest in learning English, in the same way that I don't have any interest in maths, for example. And yes, English is useful, and yes, it's important in a global society, but if you had English as an optional subject, Imagine how much time that would free up for those students that genuinely don't want to use English and will never use it, and how much capacity that would free up for students who do really want to learn English. And you could give them the opportunity to, you know, work faster through materials, do more speaking, more sort of actual learning the language, rather than go at a pace which allows people that are really not interested in English to go at the same speed. So that is an idea. I'm not sure I necessarily think that English should become optional, but it is an idea. So yeah, you were saying that improve the quality of the teaching of English and recognize some people will never speak it.
Yeah, because going back to when I was a high school student, there was an American exchange student. English teachers tried to communicate with her. She could not understand at all. so we are laughing, you know.
But this is another point. I mean, my first point. You're very good at this. My first point is about teacher training and exchange programs. Is that if you want to encourage students to speak better English, if that is your goal, you have to enable teachers to also speak better English, which means that you have to help teachers with training. You have to help teachers, put them in an environment whereby they can feel comfortable speaking English in front of the class. I'm lucky, almost all the teachers that I work with speak good English, and they are generally happy speaking English in front of the class and speaking English to me. But that's not always the case. And they haven't necessarily, some of these teachers, they haven't had the opportunity to go abroad, to hear authentic English, to get comfortable speaking English. If you look at elementary school teachers, who are, you know, starting to work with English for the first time, although usually with a native teacher, some of them can't speak any English at all. So they're learning with the students. So I think you have to give the opportunity, if you're going to change things like this, to make sure that the teachers are happy and make sure the teachers are well prepared and make sure the teachers have the skills they need in order to actually teach the speaking to students. I mean, I know we watched the funny video earlier at the beginning, but imagine if that teacher there, imagine if he'd actually been taught or had some opportunity to live abroad and spend some time abroad, he wouldn't be telling the teachers to say maza and faza anymore. So I think it's important to train the teachers and to spend the time to make sure that, you know, through exchange programs or through workshops or through time abroad or those sorts of things, that teachers are well placed to be able to teach speaking and allow speaking in their class. I think that's very important. I'll just run through the other couple and then I'll sit down and we'll have a general discussion perhaps. So the other one is English speaking as a distinct subject. So creating an environment in schools, like an Eikaiwa style, where you don't follow the textbook. There are certain topics that you have to discuss and certain objectives, tasks, for example, that you have to cover. And having English speaking as a distinct and separate skill, which also is good because it would allow the students that perhaps aren't so good when it comes to memorizing the grammar, but maybe sort of are less accurate but are very sort of creative when it comes to English and very good at understanding how the language works. It gives them an environment where they can do really well. So perhaps treating English speaking as a completely distinct and separate subject might be an idea. And the final one is investing, as the government are starting to do, in more technology in schools. We have an impression when we come from abroad that Japan is this super modern, technical sort of, you know, computers, amazing toilets that, you know, massage you and all these sorts of things. And to a certain extent that's true. And you can see in schools that they had all this amazing high-tech equipment, like sort of recording facilities, sound rooms, you know, all these language labs and things like that. And they were very, very state-of-the-art, very cutting edge 30 years ago. But if you look at your average school in the West now, obviously I don't know about Australia, but certainly in most schools in Europe, there will be one computer for every student almost. They will have, you know, smart boards, whiteboards, digital screens in schools.
Australia's the same.
And these sorts of things are used in classes to encourage, so students have access to finding their own materials, for example. So for example, I get students at my visit school where they have exceptional computer facilities, and all of our classes are in the audiovisual, the AV room. And I basically get the students to choose the sort of materials they want, what interests them, and we make posters and they find out things for themselves, and we apply the stuff that we've been learning to things that they're interested in. So if they're interested in video games, then rather than saying, okay, we're going to talk about this London festival or something like that, they can do their work around video games because it makes they're interested in it. So I think using technology as a way to make students more comfortable with the material and more comfortable with English, I think technology is another good one. I think that's probably it. Could we just have a look at the last one? And then I'm going to sit down because I'm tired. Okay. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Okay, big hand.
And then perhaps we can sit down and just talk about it.
Okay.
So we'll have an open forum.
You can be sit down.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we need to
Thank you.
So I knew that one Japanese whose parents are not rich, and he didn't have money to go to the English school like a Nova or Ion or something. But his speaking, his pronunciation is not good.
Yeah.
But he can understand English very good, so his listening ability is very good. So I asked him, okay, without going to any English school, how you study English? Then he said he watched the movie, and they read the caption. So he watched the movie, he missed some words, then go back to where he is, and then he repeats until he listens. So he do the same thing over and over. Then he memorized all the sentences. He can catch all the sentence in the native speed. So he learned, and after he start being able to listen all the sentence, then he can hear, so he can quickly learn all the sentences.
Oh, so once he's used to hearing the sentences, he can learn new ones faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, because he can listen to almost all the sentence, right? So he memorized all the phrase, and he know what kind of the phrase to use in the certain situation.
Was this?
So I think also so now the JET program also provide a native speaker, but if the students have a motivation and if they know how to study English,